Louisiana has officially become the first state to require that the 10 Commandments be displayed in public classrooms. This is the latest move from a GOP-dominated legislature pushing a conservative agenda under a new governor. And I know what you're thinking every time we bring up the GOP. Great. Another super convincing argument for contraception. Here we are again. Okay, so Louisiana has become the first state to require that 10 Commandments be displayed in public classrooms. The legislation that Republican Governor Jeff Landry signed into law on Wednesday requires a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments. Yeah, I think Jeff Landry ate a Tide Pod when he came up with this idea. Because you've got to be an insane person to ever think this is okay, a good idea, or even constitutional. It's clearly not. Opponents questioned the law's constitutionality and vowed to challenge it in court. Proponents said the measure is not solely religious, but that it has a historical significance. Okay, by that logic then, why don't we start displaying the significant tenets of Islam or the pillars of Satanism? What? They have historical roots? There's history there. The posters, which will be paired with a 4-paragraph context statement describing how the 10 Commandments, quote, were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries, must be in place in classrooms by the start of 2025. Under the law, state funds will not be used to implement the mandate. The posters would be paid for through donations. So I guess this is how they're trying to get around it by saying, well, look, I mean, state funds aren't going towards implementing the posters. Those are just donations. It doesn't matter where your funding comes from. What matters is that you have state-run institutions that are held to the Constitution, and this very clearly violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. The First Amendment's Establishment Clause prohibits the government from making any law respecting an establishment of religion. This clause not only forbids the government from establishing an official religion, but also prohibits government actions that unduly favor one religion over another. Libs getting mad at thou shouldn't steal. So going based off this dumb cunt in chat says that libs are getting mad at thou shalt not steal. Actually, no. What libs are getting mad about is that we apparently have become not only now the party of law and order, now that the Republicans are backing a convicted felon, but also we're now America first. What do you know? We're ticked off because this is a violation of the fucking Constitution. That's why people are mad, because real patriots, true Americans that actually care about the foundation of America and the principles that have made this country great are mad when we see those principles violated. Dumb fucking hemorrhoids like you come along and start blabbering on and acting like libs are mad that it says thou shalt not steal. No, it isn't. You can say don't steal without religion. What it is actually is this is true Americans disappointed that American principles are being violated, while phony patriots, phony fake dumbass patriots like this chucklefuck come along and they're like, oh, but who cares? Maybe if you read the fucking Constitution, the foundation of this country that you claim to love so much, maybe you wouldn't be such a goddamn retard. So anyway, where were we? That's right. The law also authorizes, but does not require the display of other items in K through 12 public schools. There's just so many flaws here. First of all, acting as though the 10 Commandments were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. So what? There was also a long period of time in which part of public American education was white people are superior to black people. That doesn't mean that it's okay or should therefore be brought back. Okay, in 1980, the US Supreme Court ruled that a similar Kentucky law was unconstitutional and violated the Establishment Clause of the US Constitution, which says Congress can, quote, make no law respecting an establishment of religion. the High Court found that the law had no secular purpose, but rather served a plainly religious purpose, which is true. If there's anybody here who thinks the reason that they are not murdering or stealing is because they read it in the Ten Commandments, you are a psychopath and you need to be locked up. Because the minute you don't have the Bible in front of you, you are a raping, murdering, stealing monster. Nobody needs religion to tell them not to steal or not to murder. And if you do, you're a fucking monster already. So this is not only pathetic, it's unconstitutional. And to act as though this has some historical significance is also bullshit. And I have done the courtesy of pulling up this article back from a long time ago of 2003. This is actually written by a Christian and a scholar. And she goes over why the claim that the Ten Commandments are part of American law or are a crucial part of American public education are just wrong. First and foremost, let's actually look at the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me? Okay, there's no way in which you can make a law like this that does not violate the First Amendment of the Constitution. Next, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Okay, there's no way in which a law could ever be made that would respect not committing idolatry against God that didn't violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Next, number 3, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Okay, there's no law you can make that doesn't violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Next, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay, there's no way you can make a law like this without violating the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Next, honor thy father and thy mother. That's a moral principle. There's no law regarding honoring your mother and father. I guess the American founders just forgot about that one. Thou shalt not kill. There you go. Congrats. You got one, Christians. Thou shalt not kill. And actually, if you look at the phrasing there, not even that's accurate. Thou shalt not kill. I'm sorry. There are plenty of circumstances in which it's totally fine for thou shalt kill. If someone's breaking into your home, it's okay to kill that person. If somebody is threatening you or holding you at gunpoint, it's okay to kill that person. And Republicans would be the first one, the first group of people to be preaching how great it is to be able to fucking use lethal force against anybody that steps on my lawn. So not really even that one. Sorry, Christians. I know you were really excited. I'm going to have to deduct your 1 point. Number 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. Funny story. In the early times of America, there were laws against committing adultery, but those laws were soon struck down because guess what? They were unconstitutional. Thou shalt not steal. There you go. Christians, you can have that one. Thou shalt not steal. Amen. Again, we don't really need Sky Daddy to say, hey, don't steal, because I can understand myself. If my belongings were taken from me, I would be very sad, and then I would live a less fulfilling life. Therefore, I probably shouldn't do this to other people. No, instead I need Sky Daddy to tell me this. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Well, there's some laws against lying in court or under oath, but there's not really any laws about just lying in a social setting, so sorry. L. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Okay, there's certainly not any laws here, unless, of course, the Christian conservative SJWs are now asking to be the thought police. So this person goes into pretty extensive detail as to how strained the claim that American law derives from the Ten Commandments really is. Early laws in the United States against blasphemy and heresy might be derived from the first 3 commandments, but those laws long since have been held to be unconstitutional, and rightly so. 2 of the remaining 6 can be immediately ruled out, and then what's really interesting is the claim that the Ten Commandments are the foundational source of American law defies history. Of course, there is simply no way to cover the many sources of the many aspects of American law, However, the written law was founded first, to the best of anyone's knowledge, in the Code of Hammurabi, in the Code of Harambe, the sixth ruler of the first dynasty of Babylon, who ruled from 1792 to 1750 BC. Harambe's code was lengthy and detailed. So even here, and listen to this, while an actual copy of the code itself did not appear in modern times, the existence of such a code was known before then and is considered by scholars to be the precursor in important respects to Jewish or Hebrew law. Indeed, the Ten Commandments echo some of the rules that appear in Harambe's code. I know I'm saying whatever that word is wrong. The conservatives over here are saying we need to put the Ten Commandments up in school because of the historical significance. They were taught in America. They were crucial to the American foundation. No, they weren't. Even the fucking Ten Commandments were actually ripped off from earlier codes. So this is completely unconstitutional. It's ahistorical, and it's just completely and utterly embarrassing. It looks like even Thomas Jefferson specifically railed against attempts to claim that the common law incorporated the Ten Commandments. Ben Shapiro has also offered his support for this despicable, anti-constitutional ruling in Louisiana. Shapiro uploaded this curse to humanity one day ago titled, "Bring Back the Ten Commandments in Schools."
Is because the great lie that I talked about a couple of minutes ago, this great lie that secularism is not its own form of religion, is a lie that has been telescoped into American law. This comes up today because the Louisiana governor has now declared that he is going...
So he's already opening by claiming secularism is a type of religion? No, it's not. You could maybe say it's like a type of philosophy, maybe. There's no religion anything there. It's expressly non-religious. Religion deals with existential questions. If you're looking at this from a secular lens, there's no religion there. There's no God. There's no higher power. What? Okay, by this logic, conservatism is a religion. So if you teach that in schools, that's a violation.
This comes up today because the Louisiana governor has now declared that he is going to put the Ten Commandments back in schools, and the left is losing its absolute mind. According to the Associated Press, Louisiana has become the first state to require that the Ten Commandments be displayed in every...
Also, just quick correction. No, libs aren't losing their minds. Patriots and true America lovers, they're losing their minds.
Public school classroom. It's the latest move from a GOP-dominated legislature pushing a conservative agenda under a new governor, which is usually what happens when you have, Republicans in the legislature and also Republicans as the governors. You usually get a more conservative agenda.
You usually, hey, if you're going to vote for Republicans, you're going to get a more conservative agenda and possible violations of the Constitution. But I mean, come on.
Landry said, if you want to respect the rule of law, you've got to start from the original lawgiver, who was Moses, who got the commandments from God.
And now that's why we opened with doing the little bit of research before. The original lawmaker, Moses and God, he's literally making the dumb fuck argument that American law is kind of based on the Ten Commandments. We have just read how that is expressly not true, how even Thomas Jefferson himself rebuked statements and claims like that, and that even the Ten Commandments were not the original law. The Ten Commandments were based on even earlier codes. So this is just, every aspect of it is fucking incorrect.
Opponents naturally jumped into action, suggesting that this was wildly unconstitutional. Under the law, state funds will not be used to implement the mandate. The posters will be paid for through donations, so it's not state money. It's just going to say that there has to be a display there. It also authorizes...
Yeah, okay. It doesn't matter if it's not state money. The schools are funded by state money, and therefore the government state institution must be held to the Constitution.
It does not require the display of other items in K through 12 public schools, including the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, the Northwest Ordinance. Well, very quickly, the ACLU, which is a trash organization, they used to stand for free speech. Now they just stand for radical leftism. They immediately...
This is literally standing for free speech right now, Ben. Okay, what about freedom of association? Because maybe I'm not Christian. Why should that be forced on me? And why should my tax dollars have anything to do with that?
announced that this was unconstitutional and they were going to stand up to it. CNN's Eli Honig, who is one of their legal analysts, he says this is clearly unconstitutional. We'll explain why he's wrong in just a moment and why it matters.
But this is actually the...
Okay, let's skip the CNN panel. We don't care. Tell me, Shapiro, how is this actually constitutional, please?
Unconstitutional.
There has literally been... There are court rulings going back to the 1980s that have found this exact kind of thing to be unconstitutional. How are they wrong?
Okay, so here is the problem with this particular argument. There's more on this in just a moment. First, Saudi Arabia recently ended its 50...
What? No, get out of here.
98. The problem is that the United States is not a fundamentally secular country. What I mean by that is that it is not the French Republic. This is a point that was made by Justice Scalia in a dissent in a 2005 case, in which the Constitution of France says France is a secular republic, in which religion is to be excluded generally from the public forum. That is not the United States of America.
No one's saying that religion has to be excluded from the public forum. This would be totally different if you had Christian kids going to public school and they just wanted to pray before they ate their lunch, and then the school said no. Then maybe your argument would be more comparable. No one's excluding religion from the public forum, but we are saying that you cannot establish a religion in the public forum.
The First Amendment was designed to guarantee the practice of religion against the federal government. So just to do the history of the First Amendment very quickly here, this idea that there is a separating wall between church and state in the sense that religion is never supposed to impact people's values and how they vote, or religion can never be promoted.
He's making a straw man right now. Massive straw man. The fact that people say separation of church and state, and they really think that religion doesn't influence their values? No one is saying this, Shapiro. He's straw manning. He's acting as though separation of church and state literally means that every decision you make must be strictly based on a secular thing. If you even once read in the Bible that stealing is wrong, so now you want to make a law that says stealing is bad, no more. No one thinks this. Of course, some people's values can be derived from religion, and sometimes people make decisions that are based on their values that are based on religion. No one is denying this. But separation of church and state means that state-run institutions must have an established separation, as in they cannot push, promote, and establish specific religions in that public forum. It's really that simple.
In fact, religion generally can never be promoted against irreligion generally by the government. That is also untrue. There's no historical basis for this. The First Amendment specifically says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Number one, this was never supposed to originally be implemented in the states. It took all the way until the 1940s for the Supreme Court to declare that this was now going to be applied at the state level.
Are you kidding? So Shapiro is unironically taking the position that the fucking Constitution shouldn't apply to the states. Okay, yeah, this guy, he is the most anti-American piece of fucking scum I've ever seen in my life. I can't even believe this motherfucker is actually saying that it's, what, we shouldn't have had the Constitution apply to the states? Applying civil rights to all the states, ensuring certain rights are protected by all 50 states? Really, Shapiro? You have a problem with this now? Nobody gives a fuck how long it took. What we care about is the fact that we have arrived there. The decision has been made. There is a separation of church and state. The state itself cannot establish or uphold one religion. The vast majority of American law, including the rules against killing and stealing, was borrowed in whole or in part from the British common law, which itself was viewed either as rising from natural law or from custom, not from the Ten Commandments.
One of the weirdnesses of constitutional law, the first rule is stop looking at the Constitution when you do constitutional law, because the Bill of Rights is specifically applicable to the federal government, not to the state government. In fact, 9 of the 13 colonies had established churches at the time of the Revolutionary War.
Wouldn't this apply to gun laws? Yeah, exactly. Then, by Shapiro's logic, if the Constitution didn't apply to all 50 states, California could say absolutely no guns. No guns. And if you ask about getting guns, you're getting arrested. There's no Constitution here.
Connecticut maintained its Congregationalist church, like a state-sponsored church, until 1818. New Hampshire until 1819. Massachusetts until 1833.
Gee, I wonder why all of that ceased to exist well over 100 years ago, Shapiro. Do we need to put our thinking caps on?
So well past the establishment of the First Amendment, there were states in the United States that had established religions.
So here's what he's doing. And all we had to do is just scroll through one quick article. He's trying to make it sound as if all these states had established religions after this Establishment Clause was brought forth, so therefore it must be okay to keep on doing that. Wrong. Completely wrong, actually. Although the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment clearly prohibits the creation of a national church, when the amendment was ratified in 1791, it did not eliminate established churches in those states where they still existed. Indeed, it would have encountered opposition in those states if it had sought to do so. So basically, some states had established churches and established religions. Then 1791 comes along, they ratified this amendment in the Constitution. They said, hey, we're not going to be establishing any more churches or respecting any more established religions. The ones that have already been set up before this amendment or before this ratification, they can stay. There's probably a reason why Shapiro was listing off a bunch of state-established churches all from the 1800s. Because if you scroll down right here, Great Awakenings led to wave of disestablishments. New Hampshire kept its establishment until 1817, just like what Shapiro said. Connecticut kept its establishment until 1818, and Massachusetts did not abandon its state support for Congregationalism until 1833. Between 1776 and 1796, however, in attempts to prevent undue clerical influence on state politics, 7 states adopted constitutional provisions that excluded ministers from public office. Thomas Jefferson also made explicit efforts for religious freedom. So what Shapiro's doing is dishonestly and disingenuously referencing some churches that were still sponsored by the state during the time in which state-sponsored churches were falling out of popularity and were no longer allowed to continue as far as new churches popping up. It's so fucking funny how easy it is to prove this guy wrong.
Why? Because again, the goal here was to stop the federal government from establishing its own generalized religion that would prohibit people at the state level from having their own religions. The idea that secularism was supposed to predominate in the United States is obviously untrue, and none of the founders believed that. Even the founders.
Nobody says this. Nobody's saying secularism needs to be the predominant thing in America. But when it comes to education, just like how Shapiro probably wouldn't want his kids being taught about Islam or reading the commandments of Allah or some shit, I don't want my kids reading about reading the 10 Commandments. I don't want my kids exposed to some religious crap that I don't believe in. And I know Shapiro doesn't want that for his kids either.
Even the founders who tended toward atheism tended to believe that religion had an extraordinarily positive effect on the body politic. And so the promotion of religion generally was considered a good thing by the founding fathers.
Yeah, socially, the promotion of religion in a social context, nothing was wrong with this. That could be okay. Who cares? There's freedom of religion after all.
As President John Adams wrote in a letter to the Massachusetts militia, quote, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion."
Here we go. Yep. The very, very classic.
Our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people.
Yeah, when he was saying moral and religious people, he literally just meant like a moral and ethical people. It does not mean you must be religious. John Adams also questioned the influence of the commandments and the Sermon on the Mount on the legal system. There's also this quote, and I know he was writing this to Muslims, so there are some critics that will say, well, he was lying about this. But I mean, John Adams also said, quote, "As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility, and as the said states never entered into any war, etc." So John Adams has also said that America is explicitly not a Christian nation, and it sounds here that he was firmly against the official establishment of any religion, and he was a champion of religious freedom. So all that John Adams meant by that stupid fuck quote that all these conservatives take out of context is simply that, hey, if we're going to rely on society to a degree, we need to have a society of ethical, moral, empathetic people.
George Washington said in his first inaugural address, quote, "The foundation of our national policy will be laid in the pure and immutable principles of private morality. There exists in the economy..."
Private morality is a big difference from religion, Christianity, or really anything. Private morality, again, backs up what I've been saying. This has to do with relying on a moral people since we don't have the government up in everybody's business enforcing every single thing. You have to be an insane person to try and jump to the conclusion that, yes, America is meant to have established religion or was built on religion. Even if America was actually expressly founded on Christianity, that still does not mean that it's okay to have the Ten Commandments plastered in state institutions, because that still violates the Establishment Clause.
There exists in the economy and course of nature an indissoluble union between virtue and happiness. Even James Madison, who wrote...
Yeah, okay, that sounds way more like he's talking about natural law, which again is derivative from the British law, the natural law, the common law, which is where a lot of their laws came from. So, no, this doesn't sound like religion. This actually sounds much more in keeping with what the British at the time tended to believe.
Even James Madison, who wrote the non-establishment clause of the Virginia state constitution, for example, he did so because he thought he was strengthening religion. He thought that if you established a religion in Virginia, it would prohibit the flowering of religion in the private sphere.
Why are you telling us this, Shapiro? This hurts your argument really bad. Look, guys, even though he wrote the law establishing the separation, he actually still was okay with religion. So? And also, everything you're saying, you're admitting, even John Adams wanted the flourishing of religion in the private sector. Even if the law was written with the weird intention of spreading religion, actually, it doesn't change anything. The law is still the law. And John Adams, even though he wanted religion to flourish, if anything, it's kind of debunking your argument even more. You're literally saying that John Adams didn't want an establishment of religion because it would hurt the flourishing of religion. And now you're simultaneously supporting the establishment of religion because John Adams wanted religion to flourish, but that was originally why he wanted there to be a separation.
Thomas Jefferson, the guy who everyone talks about in terms of coining the phrase separation between church and state, recognized, quote, "The moral branch of religion instructs us how to live well and worthily in society."
So, yeah, some people derive their morality from religion. I think that's stupid, but they do. Okay. What does this have to do with a state institution respecting an established religion? Please, make it make sense.
They have read the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause as in opposition to one another. Remember, the Constitution says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There are two ways to read that, and the Supreme Court has read this in the dumbest possible way. One is that Congress shall not...
Wow, so now not only is Ben Shapiro telling us what the Founding Fathers were really thinking or what their true intentions were, now he's telling us the fucking Supreme Court decision is just wrong. All the times that the Supreme Court has clearly ruled that, hey, a state institution cannot uphold an established religion, they're just all wrong. Mr. Ben Shapiro actually has the superior legal knowledge.
Prohibit you from freely exercising your religion. And the second is, Congress shall not establish any religion, and it has read them completely separately. And what that's done is it has put them in conflict with one another, because it turns out that if you express your religion freely in the public square, then the Supreme Court might say you're violating the Establishment Clause. But that's never how this...
No, they don't. So if somebody is freely exercising their own religion, they have a right to do that. How the fuck would the Supreme Court say, no, you can't do that? You're allowed to practice your religion on public ground in a state institution. You can pray, you can practice your own religion, but you can't force it on other people. You can't uphold it. You can't have government officials upholding it. Neither a state nor the federal government can set up a church, neither can pass laws which aid one religion, aid all religions, or prefer one religion over another.
They were meant to be read in tandem. The basic idea was you can't establish, say, Catholicism as the official religion of the United States, because in doing so, you will quash the free exercise of people of other religions.
So when state institutions are showing special preference to one religion, that can sometimes hinder the free exercise of other people's religious freedom. Maybe you're not a Christian. Maybe you just genuinely and sincerely are a Muslim, and that's something that you don't believe in. Don't you think having schools, state institutions, this is the religion, 10 commandments, bitch? You don't think that might be a little intimidating when it comes to their freedom of expression?
That is what the Constitution was designed to prohibit, was compulsion in religion. Well, there's
What? There is no compulsion in religion, meaning do not force anyone to become Muslim? So, okay, then what counts as compulsion? Shapiro? You don't think state-run institutions upholding and respecting one religion over another doesn't come off a bit like forcing? Does it just mean you can't hold somebody at gunpoint and tell them to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior?
There's nothing compulsory about a sign on a classroom wall. If there was something compulsory about a sign on a classroom wall, there'd be all sorts of serious free speech issues in a classroom, because it turns out classroom walls are filled with all sorts of stuff that's on the walls.
Can we just take a minute to appreciate that Ben Shapiro is actually interpreting this as the most weird niche way possible, just so he can be like, since it's technically not the compulsion in religion, it's okay for the state to establish and uphold one religion. I'm sorry, but there's a reason why there has never been a successful state that has established a religion or religion in schools, and every single legal scholar agrees it's unconstitutional. Yeah, exactly. The article in the Constitution is so clear that he's gone on a 20-minute rant to tackle one sentence in order to try and bend it. Exactly. Also, good point, chat. These numbskulls also claim that the LGBT stuff is being forced on them, forced on kids. So just telling kids that gay people exist, that's apparently forcing it on kids? But plastering specific religious beliefs and religious laws on the classroom, that's not forcing anything? So having a gay flag on the wall, forcing the kids to be gay, having the 10 commandments on the wall, not forcing the kids to be Christian?
Right? Is it violating my free speech if somebody puts up on the wall a sign that says something I disagree with? I'm not sure how that violates my free speech.
Yeah, because the example you gave is somebody putting something on the wall. Hey, if I walk into my neighbor's house and they put something up on the wall that I don't agree with, is that violating my free speech? No. What people are saying, though, is that state institutions requiring, mandating that this thing be on the wall, that is a violation. Because now you're talking about state-run institutions that are supposed to be held to the fucking Constitution, violating that, and instead mandating that a specific religious text be placed on the walls. It is a deliberate upholding of an established religion.
That if I walk into a public school and there is a sign that quotes the Bible, in a non-denominational way, by the way, because it turns out that the three major religions, traditionally, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all agree that the 10 Commandments were given to Moses, and they agree on the content of the 10 Commandments. So in 1970...
So, there's still separation of church and state. Like, you just said it yourself. A public school having religious text up there, that is a problem. Because now you have a government institution respecting and upholding one religion. It does not make any sense, Benjamin. Okay? What you're doing right now is just jumping through hoops, so many mental gymnastics, to try and just justify this. It makes no fucking sense. Also, to say that, well, most people already agree with this or most religions do, you're kind of falling into the ad populum fallacy at that point. What if 100% of America was Christian? Could we put the Christian stuff up then? No, because there's still separation of church and state.
71, the Supreme Court took up a case called Lemon v. Kurtzman, and they came up with an incredibly stupid test to determine whether some sort of government action violated the separation of church and state. They said that any law had to fulfill three conditions. One, it had to have a secular purpose. Two, it had to have a predominantly secular effect. And 3, it had to not foster excessive entanglement between government and religion. Now, when
Okay, yeah, that's actually a pretty fair test, right? I like how he's just like, this test is stupid. Why is it stupid? It sounds like actually a pretty comprehensive list of simple questions you can ask in order to reach a simple conclusion.
that is on its face nonsensical. It basically doesn't set any standard at all. Because I can make an argument for virtually any religious display that it both violates the Lemon Test and also does not violate the Lemon Test.
Because Ben said it was stupid, it's stupid then. Okay. Is this just his whole thing? Just purposely misunderstanding what he's saying to then try to make himself look smart?
In 1980, the Supreme Court, this is the case that Eli Honig was referring to, in a case called Stone versus Graham, there was a law that required the classroom display of the Ten Commandments. And the Supreme Court found that it was unconstitutional because it had no secular legislative purpose. They said,
yeah, exactly. Even to say it's historical, so there might be a historical thing there, but it's still religious.
They said the Ten Commandments convey a religious undertone because they include the religious duties of believers, worshiping the Lord God alone, avoiding idolatry, not using the Lord's name in vain, observing the Sabbath day. But again, that is
okay, yes. That's so clear, Ben. Okay? A 3-year-old could understand this. And now, of course, here comes Ben. He's going to be like, huh?
But again, that is based on a fundamental misreading that, again, is enshrined in Lemon, that the government of the United States has to take no position between religion and irreligion. That the government of the United States has none interest in promoting public morality via generalized religion.
Okay. No. If the government is interested in promoting public morality via religion, you are now stepping into fascistic territory. Yeah, I said it and I don't give a fuck. You're getting into fascistic territory because now you're talking about a government that is trying to legislate social behavior. So how would a government promote morality via religion without upholding, establishing, or giving special treatment to a specific religion? How the hell would that ever happen, Ben? Even if the United States did have an interest in maintaining a moral society, what the hell does that have to do with, hey, don't worship any other god besides the Christian God? How does that instill morality in people? It doesn't.
That the government has to be absolutely agnostic about whether it is promoting the Ten Commandments or whether it is promoting Just Stop Oil. That these are paganism, Judeo-Christian religion, the Ten Commandments, all these things.
Wait, yeah, the government generally is not able to make a strong statement regarding religion. Yes, this is all true. Why are you just saying things that are true in a funny tone to try and undermine it? It's not working.
Are of a piece, according to the Supreme Court from 1971 on. Get to more on that in a moment. First, an internal.
This is just brutal, and I don't really want to get through. I don't think I'm getting through any more of this. We've watched him talk now for almost 20 minutes, and he's acknowledged the Supreme Court rulings in the past have found that any kind of public school trying to display the Ten Commandments is unconstitutional. He read that, and he's still just like, no, they're wrong, though. I'd say there you guys have it. Ben Shapiro is definitely getting closer to fascistic territory.